So I did go ahead and just updated just now the instructions as Larry was sitting here doing it with me. I just updated this. One of the screenshots was a little misleading because there was already a Google Voice number in it. So I put one, like a fresh account, what it would look like if you had never created one, and then made a note about when you're setting it up that you're going to need another number to verify. Like to call, is going to have to call that number to help you set it up. So I didn't make that note in there.
Does it have to be a mobile phone, or could it be a home phone that you verify from?
I think I've no reasons ever tried it with a home phone, but I think you can. I think you can. I give you the option.
Because it seems like the kids who don't have cell phones would at least be able to do that. But if they have a cell phone, they can activate it from.
Yeah. So I have Sprint too, Michelle, and when I set it up, I had it separate, and then now I have it so that way it forwards calls to my phone. But I think it's because they may have updated it, which seems to be happening all the time, right? So when you did 7.3, you had to go through, you had to set up the Google Voice account online, then you had to set it up on the tablet, and then test it out. So did anybody have any troubles with getting the app to connect to Google Voice on the tablet?
Nope.
I mean, I read through everything like 2 or 3 times before I tried anything because I didn't trust myself, but it seemed to work fine.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. No difficulty setting up the app.
One thing with Google Voice is it says you can port your cell phone to it, and it sounds like that might mess kids up, so we might want to warn them not to do that.
Right.
That make sense?
Yeah, you want to make sure you're keeping them separate, right? And that's why I was trying to update this note in here. There's this page 6 of no texting while busy. I was trying to update that note that's in red. So if you have suggestion for different wording, let me know. Trying to make it clear that you want to keep the two separate, right? Your Google Voice number is for your tablet, not for not your cell number. You don't want to make them combined, right? You want to just use your cell number to verify that you're the person on the other end setting this up. But other than that, you don't want to have any connection. You don't want to connect it at all. I know, like in the classrooms, sometimes it's nice to point out to the students that Google Voice, it's good if you have a device and you want to text message someone, but you don't have a data plan, you don't have cell service. You can just text someone over Wi-Fi. Some of the kids like hearing about that because they don't know that exists. So that's a good conversation to have with them when they do this. Is they can do texting just with the tablet and they don't need to have a phone service. You might get some parents upset, but the kids seem to generally like talking about that and knowing that capability exists. But I am happy to hear that it did go okay for the most part. If there's no immediate issues that need to be updated, then that's always good to hear. Let's see. So, any questions about the tutorial itself?
I think it was pretty easy to follow. It was pretty clear.
Give me a second. I just want to check something. Oh no, wrong one. I was thinking of another app. Nope,
Okay.
no question here.
Okay. Yes, Kanan, yes, I know that is on the agenda for today. There's, and I'm not sure necessarily if you wanted to talk about the solution thing, but if it's the solution thing, we are going to discuss it. I will get to it. I did see that you did write, Ralph, and we talked about it. Um, so one thing I want to point out is in the classroom, the students sometimes will, when they're first hearing about this idea of no texting while busy, um, they are kind of confused about the idea of how that actually worked. And I've seen it in several different classrooms when I was there for them doing this lesson. And they're not really clear on the fact that it's about you putting the device down and letting the device respond for you. And that's because they are trying to test it on the tablet, but then they have their own cell phone, so they'll have their own cell phone in their hand. They'll send a text message to their Google Voice, and it will go to themselves on their tablet. So it's maybe a good idea to have them partner with someone and kind of like make it like they're testing it in a scenario. So have one partner hold the tablet and pretend like they're driving, and then tell the other person to text them. Right, and say that, well, the person who's driving can't touch their tablet, right? They're driving, they have to remain focused in driving. Because if you're testing it by yourself, they kind of get this idea that's like, well, I don't understand what's happening, I'm texting, but then I'm not texting, and they get confused. So it's probably a good idea to do maybe a little scenario with them and have two different people who are testing it and working together rather than one person testing it by themselves. I'm not sure if you guys, when you were working on your own, if you felt it was a little strange trying to test it out by yourself. I don't know if you had that feeling, but the students definitely can sometimes not see the value of having the app when you're testing it by yourself. So I recommend having it test with someone else.
Pauline, in most of the schools that you've observed, is it one tablet per student, or do they typically go one tablet for two students?
We provide one tablet per pair.
But do the schools typically buy more and then make it one per, or not really?
Not typically. I've only seen that happen in two different classes. They didn't get enough for everyone. They got more, but they didn't get enough for everyone. They were, out of all the schools that we've worked with and that I've worked with visiting them, there was only two schools that their departments were gracious enough to give them a little bit more funding, and they used it to go and buy more tablets, but I don't know of any class that has one per every student. It helps in the case when you have students who have their own Android devices and they want to bring it in and use their own, but I haven't seen that happen.
Do most schools let you bring your own device, the students?
Yes, I haven't seen any that have said no cell phones allowed or no tablets allowed, right? That I have seen, for the most part, has been a case-by-case basis about what the teacher allows them to have in the classroom, right? So even when I was in high school, I remember them saying, you got to put your phone away during class. You can have it, but you got to put it away. Here, I haven't seen anybody say, you can't bring the cell phone into school. You just, it's just a general rule of you're not supposed to be using it during class time. You as an instructor just have to tell the students it's okay to have it out if you're using it for, instructional time. Which even then you have to monitor what they're doing. So. Any other questions about the no texting app? Okay. I did try to put together your pairs for the Create project. At the moment, I'm just waiting for Ralph to review them. He's not here today. waiting for him to review the pairs, and once he reviews them, then I'll send them out to you. Unless he does it while we're still meeting, then I'll announce it during the hangout. But wanted to make sure he was okay with them first. So then the other thing to talk about would be solutions. So you've seen the structure for the lessons has been, you do a tutorial, you walk through a tutorial with the students, then they go off and they do the second part of the lesson, of the programming part, which is the enhancement. So for example, you had 6.2, which was President's Quiz. You do the tutorial, you get the initial President's Quiz set up, they do a reflection, answer the questions. Then you move on to 6.3, which is President's Quiz Project, which you tell them, here are some ideas for enhancements. Kind of take what you've learned so far and make an enhancement to the app so it works better, or explore a new component and add something new to it. In those enhancement lessons, those little creative project lessons, it comes with, a little explanation about what you should be enhancing, what you should be doing, some ideas, and then at the bottom it comes with solutions. This is true for most all of the lessons that we have. The solutions are provided, and they're on the student side. So a little discussion that we should have is, what are the pros and cons of having the solutions on the student side of the lesson for the students to see? Ready, set, go.
The biggest one is that the students will go straight to the solutions and not really think it out for themselves. They might not, the ones that know it's there, they just might go straight to that rather than trying to struggle with it and figure it out themselves. But on the flip side, it's a good checkpoint for those that are working it out themselves. They can look at, am I on the right track? Am I going with what's expected? Things like that.
I think it's just like almost any other subject. There's always going to be the students that will look for the easiest way out, which might be looking at the answers in the back of the book. I think that I'm not necessarily saying there's a positive to it, but I think to mitigate that, we need to focus on a lot more like projects and open-ended things so that they can use the tools. They can go wherever they need to get the tools, but they have to apply them. And that's another thing like my school is doing, is trying to go less towards memorization and more towards application and the higher level of thinking and all that. But I do think that having the solutions as an available option, just like with the way the course is set up, is a nice way so that if a student does get stuck, if the honest student is doing it and they say, okay, I honestly can't figure this out, it does give them a way to answer the question that they have themselves without having to go directly to the teacher.
My question was, is there some kind of mechanism where we can keep it from them for the first couple of days of the lesson and then eventually release it?
That becomes a problem when you're using our Google Course Builder site, because of the fact that we have people who are doing this at their own pace.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So like Michelle is saying she wants to control when they see the solution. That is hard for us to do when we have people who are doing it at their own pace.
So we probably need to build some assessments then to help guarantee that the kids aren't just copying all the stuff.
Okay, so if you're with the solutions being there, I mean, you see we have a couple, I don't know, did anybody else want to add any pros and cons? Did something else come to mind? With the students, these are all true. We want to have them the solutions available so that way people who are in particular people who are doing it at their own pace can go through and they can figure out on their own. Maybe they don't have an instructor that is doing this with them. then they can get it and access it themselves. It helps when you have someone who maybe got behind in class or someone who's going ahead on the flip side, right? Then it kind of frees you up where you can either send them off on their own to kind of check on their own and really rely on you a little bit less. Or if someone's trying to get caught up and, you don't want them to spend too much time struggling, right? Because what do you do when a student has been struggling too much? I think this is similar to what is happening as far as, assessing the student. What is really the ways of assessing the student in this particular type of class? I think that goes to say, well, the CREATE project is one way that you're assessing them, which is true. The College Board is actually saying, we're going to give them a grade by using the CREATE performance task. They have to go, it has to be their own work. The teacher can't help them. They can use whatever is available to them, and it has to be their own work, right? Something of their own that they've made. So that's one way of assessing them, is we have these larger projects, and depending on time, you'd have the first CREATE project, the second CREATE project. You may want to add in another one, right? Depending on how much time you have. That's one way of assessing them, is doing the projects. I think these little creative projects, these little enhancement ideas, from our point of view, has been more so viewed as like almost similar to the reflections, right? A student can go and find the answers on the reflections. Why? Because so many people have done them already and they have them posted. All they're going to do is do a Google search, find the easiest way out and go do a Google search and do it. But how do you assess that the student actually got the concept, right? Well, you give them an exam, right? You can give them an exam, you can give them a quiz that will test them. So that could be some of the teachers in the past have said I have access to all the Google form quizzes that they made. We have the electronic exams, you can give them a paper exam. That's how you can test actual written knowledge of the concept. So these are them continuing trying to build knowledge as they go along, and if they don't know how to do any of this and they take the easiest way out every single time, when they go to do a big project like the CREATE project, they're going to run into a problem, right? If they want to figure out how to do something on their own for their own project, there's a lot of material they can go out and try to find it, but really, what are you grading them on in the end? Where you have the final, what can the app do? Does it work? The code, you can look at their code to see how they did it. But more importantly, you have their write-up, which is how you can assess, do they understand what they're doing, right? All this to say, there's different ways throughout the course, and it's a matter of thinking which ones are the formative assessments and which things are the final summative assessment. So, and then the exams and the projects, right? So it's a matter of how you look at them. And I think this course is built around that these are really more formative. There's building on doing this as they do it, right? Rather than we're assessing you and you're going to get an A or a B depending on if you can put a tiny WebDB into this code for the project. For 6.8, you're going to get an A or a B, going to get a letter grade. When you put a DB into this President's Quiz project for your grade, that's not really how they're being used. That's not really the context. If you are looking for something to really test that they know how to do the programming, there are the drills that you could use as a way, but even again, they're still learning, I think, with the drills as well. Another thing that teachers have done is they've made app quizzes where one teacher, she would, on a piece of paper, put a description of what she wanted, and she'd say, okay, guys, you're going to have a quiz. Well, it's not going to be a written quiz. It's not going to be, multiple choice or short answer. It's going to be an app quiz. And you have to build this app that I described on the paper, and you have X amount of time to build it. So that's another way that you can come up, in your individual class of doing that as well. I don't know, any thoughts? Feel free to jump in anytime here.
I agree with Michelle. I like that quiz app idea. It gives them a good way to give you a good check-in point.
So how do you guys see, from the teacher's perspective, the grading standpoint happening? I don't know if you've seen some of the syllabi that are available that are samples. Excuse me, but how do you see the grade breakdown being? So, like, what would the reflections fall under for you when you're giving a grade, for example, and what would these lessons that they're going through, what would they be just participation grade, or Shannon, are you saying that you did 6.2, which is President's Quiz, for example. Now I'm going to give you a quiz grade for doing the enhancements. Is that how you were thinking of it? Not to pick on you, but I know that.
I really thought that in terms of my grading percentages, and I'm assuming we have pretty much free reign there relative to how we teach the course, these app quizzes that you mentioned could be as much as 30% of the grade. Projects themselves could be 30% of the grade. The tests could be 30% of the grade. And then homework / reflections would be 10%. I don't know if you feel that the reflections being 10% is too small a number, but I tend to give less weighting to those types of things and tend to be more assessment heavy, but that's my own personal teaching style.
From what I've seen in the classroom, and if you're going to count reflections like that as such a low percentage, you will find that there are students who won't do them. Basically, it doesn't, they'll get into the habit of not doing them at all. So what I've seen some teachers do is when they see that happening, they'll pick and say, I'm going to do this check of your whole, maybe half of your portfolio is going to count towards a test grade, for example. So, I mean, it's up to you and what your students are going to do.
Well, how do you feel about 25% each then for the 4 categories? Do you think that's a better way to motivate the students to do a good job on the reflections?
I think it's more, I think it's more of a fair way to do it. I mean, you're going to have people who are not doing as well. I think just there's the bad side and there's the good side. Like there's counting them too little, and then there's counting things too much. So counting things too much, I mean, like your projects and your exams, for example, are going to be like 50% of your grade. Like that's just crazy. Like there are some, like especially at the college level, teachers that do that, and the students don't like it because they're not good testers. Some might feel like they're better at building the app and showing you that they know these things by making the app rather than sitting and taking a timed paper and pencil test. So I do like the idea personally of balance, of balancing it out so that way they're equally, maybe not exactly equally, right? But close enough to be equal that it's all equal weight or close, to show them the students, to show the students that they need to take every part seriously.
My only real concern with the reflections is from talking to the more experienced teachers is that there appears to be a lot more plagiarism there than actually on the projects themselves.
Yeah, so when you're saying the projects, are you saying the larger performance task project?
Or even the regular app building. I was actually, when I was talking to them, I was worried that the kids would be copying that. And I'm sure there will be some kids that do, but most of the teachers I spoke to at the pizza gatherings suggested to me that there's a lot more copying on the reflections than there is on the programming part.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, Chris, so the quizzes that you're sending, are these things you'd be willing to send me a copy of, and then I can add them to the repository of quizzes that I already have, which I'm going to release to you guys next week? So if that's something you'd be willing to do, that would be great. And then next week, when I share all the materials with everyone, I'll show you how everything is in one place, and you can access all the materials there. That would be great.
Pauline?
Yes.
I don't know if there's anyone else who's running the course as an honors section. To be able to get the year-long class, I had to run it as an honors section. And so that means it's a weighted GPA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I expect more from the honors section than I would from what we call our A-level section.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have specific rules about grading in regards to participation in homework and things like that. So, but I was going to do it so that I have a grade that I'm calling, instead of project, calling it lab. So they have to be attending and actively working during the lab, because we have a lot of problems with electives, kids doing other homework in electives, or wanting to go to the library or go see other teachers, things like that. And this is only my second year to teach at this school, but that's how I was going to try to handle it, to make sure that when they're in the room, they're actively working on the material. And I was going to weight everything, including the reflections, more heavily, because it's like a prep for a college level class.
Yeah, I think that is, like, you know, this is an example of, there's some of you with AP level already, and some of you with honors, and there's, and I think everybody in the school you said was going to end up taking it at some point, right, or close to it. So, if you know that, like, the students in your class are going to be students who are more responsible students and they're more honors and AP level, I think it's a little easier. For the teachers who have a wide range of students, which has happened in the past years, it's a little bit more difficult, right? You get the ones who try to do the bare minimum. They're not really engaged in what they're doing. They're there because a guidance counselor put them there. Really didn't want to be in the class. You know, they're there for whatever reason, other than they actually were interested and wanted to take the class themselves. Then you have to worry more so about this grade distribution part. I do like the idea of saying, yes, it's a lab, and definitely saying there's going to be a participation grade. You have to actively participate while you're in class. I think if you already have AP level students, they're going to do that anyway. I think that they do that themselves, like they have that attitude and bring that to the class where they're ready. They're ready to come in and they get started and they take it seriously. The idea of the lab part, and I think this is a suggestion for everyone, a strong suggestion, is that you put in that there is going to be some type of lab time, and that will help you in the long run as far as when you're getting ready for moving on for it to be an AP course, right? Especially if you're one of the teachers who are interested in really doing this as an AP level and you want to move on to be an AP instructor for the course. Definitely make sure you have some note of acknowledgement and saying there's a lot of lab time. I say that because there's reason to support that, you know, the AP college board level is looking for you to have some type of lab, especially for a computer science course. Here at Trinity, in computer science, we split it between lecture time and lab time. Although, contrary to that, when I teach this course in Route 2 at the college level, we teach this course in particular during a lecture time because the students come in the whole entire time. We're really in lab, but they consider it a lecture, right? So, as long as you acknowledge that there is some type of lab time going, because they really are doing a lot of hands-on stuff. You're not lecturing them the entire time. They're doing a lot of work on the computer and in the lab. Even if you're not in a lab, you're not going to a separate lab, they're doing a lot of lab time work. So I do think it's going to depend on the level of students you have, what level class you're teaching at, right? What is it labeled, honors, AP level, regular, right? That's going to come in and be a factor. It matters how you as the teacher, for us it doesn't matter so much as far as the data collection, how you weight things, but that's more so for what your teaching style is going to be as you use the material, right? Are you going to have a lot of quizzes? Are you going to have, a lot more projects? Are you going to add in another project or so? Another thing that was brought up is regarding the solutions again. Right now, if you take, and I keep saying, I know 6.2, 6.3, 6.3, the enhancements for President's Quiz, that has the solutions. In particular, if you look at 3.3, which was the first paint pot projects, I think that was a good example of how the enhancements were up there, and there's a note that says, please, try the enhancements as much as you can on your own. If you get stuck or have trouble, then you can see the solutions. So if you look at 3.3, I think that was a good example of how we intended that to be as far as having the solutions in there. One suggestion that was made earlier today was that instead of having the solution video embedded into the lesson, so right now it says, here's the solutions, here's the enhancements, here's the solution video. Would it make a difference at all if the video for the solutions was not embedded and showed up there, but instead just linked? Would the students be less likely to actually go to it, or do you think they're going to search for it either way?
I think they'll search for it either way. Eventually, once they get the hang of doing some things in the beginning, then they'll be like, why do I want to go through it all? I'll just go to the answers and just build what they build.
I agree. Does anybody else have any feelings about that? Do you think it would make a difference at all?
I don't think it'll make much of a difference. And having them available is very valuable too. Either way.
Good point, Greg. Good point. So I think that's where the idea of that suggestion came from was if you see a video, you feel like you have to watch the video, or if you see a link, you may miss it. You may pay less attention to it. Which again, on the flip side of that is that the students realize that there's a link for the solutions every time. They're going to remember that it's there and they may go directly to it, which is going to be the person who's taking the easiest way out. Right? That's who we keep referring to as the student that's going to take the easiest way out. So that is a consideration. There was a suggestion that was put up was remove the embedded video, put a link instead. But we do, I think overall in the past year we've had this conversation as well. What are the pros and cons of having the solutions there, with it being an online course as well, and students moving at their own pace and taking it, taking it individually and on their own. We do want to have the solutions there for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So definitely something we will think about. But for now, as far as the solutions being there, they're going to be there in some way, shape, or form. It's how do you actually treat, the grading of the work, and how responsible are the students going to be for, how heavily weighted are doing the enhancements going to be as part of the course. Any other questions, comments?
I think even if the solutions are there, it's so worthwhile, and the outcome is almost the same if they just go through and follow the solution or watch the video and go step by step. They're still learning those skills and how to use the blocks and how to use that functionality of the apps. It's not like they're just copying and pasting a text answer or something. They actually have to go through it to arrive at the solution. So it doesn't bother me so much that they're there.
Thank you, Dana. Right, so it's like doing an extended tutorial.
I think that one of the challenges for the class is actually going to be getting the students to, process the information. And so that's why the reflections are helpful. And I agree with Dana that they need the practice. If they're actually reading the text solution, then I think they're getting the practice. But then some kids are always going to follow the video. But for myself, I've been trying to read everything so that when I go get ready to teach, I'll be ready, because I don't think I'm going to have time to go back and read every lesson again, so I'm trying to read it now, and it's time consuming to try to process it that way. But I think it's going to be challenging to get the kids these concepts that they're going to need for when they take the AP test. I think that's the challenging part. I think some kids will really pick up on the graphical user interface and they'll be able to code, but then understanding the principles underneath that, the computer science principles, what's going to be difficult, understanding how that relates back to the ideas. So because we have all this background, so we have background knowledge, we have ways to understand what's happening, but they won't have the vocabulary, they won't have all these other skills. And so that's what's going to be the challenging part to me is making sure that they understand the concepts. Because the kids, like I'd mentioned before, the students that I have not had a lot of computer experience. They just don't get it in the middle school. That's just not the focus. Like we have like foreign language and things like that. There's much more focus on that than there is on technology.
Yeah, I think that's definitely another thing you have to take into consideration as well is what's the background of the students and what you're expecting the outcome to be. Right, so there's a lot of considerations that come down to who is in your classroom, who are you teaching. I still haven't gotten the okay from Ralph, so I may hold off with telling you your partners for now. You are not expected to work on this. We don't want you to work on it until after you tell us and share your elevator pitches with us, which would be first thing Monday morning. So that way, if you get everything done for tomorrow, you have a free weekend to kind of relax before we come to the end. It's on my mind, I don't know if I told this before, but you guys are going to end up taking a final exam. And since your presentations are going to be on Thursday, the final exam will be on Friday. Start studying. Is there anything else that you guys want to discuss?
I know Shannon wanted to talk about the next tomorrow's work as well. I had some questions.
Sure.
Also, Shannon, you go first.
We've already addressed my issues about tomorrow's work because Pauline's talked about what happens with the solutions already being provided.
Okay, my only question was I built the app perfectly fine for the My Directions, but it could never find my location. And I tried moving around a little bit. It came up with GPS coordinates, but it never actually converted that to an address so that it could get put into Google.
Can you send me your AIA file so I can test it over here?
I will.
Alrighty. Sounds like something we can work out.
Okay, it looks like it is working, but if it just finds my actual address, it would work, but...
Okay. I would say, yeah, just send it to me, and it sounds like it could be just like maybe a location thing. It could be something with a device as well. So, which I haven't heard of anything like that happening. Send me the AI file, and I'd be happy to test it out and see what happens and work it out with you.
Okay, thank you. I'll send it to you now.
All right. I hope not, Greg. I hope not. Greg is asking if the solutions are online for your exam. I hope not. It will be electronic. It's like it will be fairly similar to what your students would be taking. So you get to take the same exam and see what it would be like for them to take. So it'll be electronic, some multiple choice, some short answer. If there's no other questions or anything, I guess we'll see you tomorrow. If you have questions about the My Directions app, if you have things you need to get caught up on, make sure you're doing that. You got some time to catch up. And as soon as Ralph approves the pairings that I sent him, I will let you know. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.
You too.